Shalom lekulchem. I'm going to do this in English, not in Hebrew. I hope you don't mind, because there's going to be a lot of other people besides the ones in Israel which are going to be watching this session. Firstly, thank you very much for staying so late to listen to the last two sessions, minus one before the last. There's a panel straight afterwards. And today I would like to talk to you about OpenStack in the enterprise. Are you ready? Or you can also read the title of the session to be, Is the Enterprise Ready for OpenStack? My name is Maish. I can be found on Twitter or on my blog. Easiest way to get hold of me. I have been working in IT and virtualization for the past 10 to 15 years. I can't exactly remember how many. Originally started in a company called NDS, which was about 2 years ago bought out by Cisco. That's where I work at the moment. I work as a platform architect, defining production or enterprise solutions for enterprise customers in the media market. Today what we're going to be talking about, before that, is a small disclaimer. This is not an OpenStack bashing session whatsoever. I don't have anything against OpenStack. As I say, I really like OpenStack and what they're doing. The purpose of the session is to be an eye-opener for whoever is watching or listening, to see exactly what is missing in your enterprise in order for you to go to a full production or a full enterprise solution based on OpenStack. And as I said, I really like OpenStack. Today's agenda, and before I start with the agenda, is one more thing, is that a lot of the material for this presentation is based upon the some of the discussions which were held at the Atlanta Summit for the operators. A lot of operators was the first time they had a separate track besides the development track and the user track. They had an operators track for getting feedback from people who are deploying OpenStack clouds and selling OpenStack services, what can be improved and what is missing. So the journey we're going to do today is, what are we doing? The things we're going to be talking about today are, where are we? What is our current situation? What is going on in the enterprise deployment market? And things which can be improved or are not really there yet. So OpenStack has grown up. It's the 9th release. The picture is actually not from today. It's from the OpenStack Summit that Jonathan also gave one of the keynotes. And the user base has grown, as you saw today on the keynote as well, something like 19,000 active commits or bugs which were put in, or lines of code, I don't remember exactly, something like, I don't remember how many. A lot of people are committing code to OpenStack itself and putting in features and continuously developing the whole product in order to make a better cloud stack or a cloud piece of cloud software environment or a cloud layer for whoever would like to use it. There were 4,500 attendees, which was almost double than what there was the previous summit in Hong Kong, and I'm sure it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. How do I know that OpenStack has grown up? Because 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, when I presented my first session in the previous OpenStack summit about OpenStack for VMware admins, the biggest question was, how do I install OpenStack? What is OpenStack? How can I use it? What is the difference between OpenStack and what I already have in my current environment? And today we're talking about multiple different vendors which are seeing maybe the dollar signs which are slipping through their fingers, or perhaps their way that they can contribute or put in a certain amount of added value, and they're all putting out what they call their own distributions or own flavors of OpenStack. And I do not like using the word distributions or distros, for the very simple reason is they're not really distributions. It's the same OpenStack software. They're getting it from the same trunk of code. The only thing which they're doing differently, in most cases, there are one or two very specific use cases which things are done differently, is they're modifying the way it's deployed. One is doing it with the Chef, one is doing it with the Juju, one is doing it with Puppet, the other one is doing it with all kinds of other things, Fuel. But the code is always the same. It's the same OpenStack code, which is in trunk, and the only thing which is different between them is the way it's deployed. So it's not really different distributions or different flavors of OpenStack, but it's more different deployment methods of OpenStack. And of course, each one of the vendors, and I'm sure I probably forgot some others as well, but this is the list which I came up, have their own way of deploying OpenStack. Rackspace does it with Chef, Mirantis does it with Fuel, Red Hat does it with Foreman and Puppet, Cisco does it also with Puppet. I'm not exactly sure how IBM or HP do it themselves. Piston does it also with their own kind of method it is. So there are all kinds of different distributions. OpenStack has grown up. It's not what can I do with OpenStack anymore, it's how do I deploy it? And how do I deploy it in an efficient manner that I can continue using and building this management layer of infrastructure for my cloud? So what is, if you would ask me, what is on the mind of somebody who's been running an enterprise virtualized environment today in their organization? The main thing is, and you come to this person, you say, okay, I want you to install OpenStack and start to provide services on OpenStack. So for me, the first things that I would ask is, number one, how do I keep my management stack of all the control nodes, network nodes, storage nodes, Swift nodes, Glance, Cinder, Neutron, Ceilometer, Heat, and so on and so forth, and all the extra components which are coming up every 6 months, the whole time with everything new. How do I keep it running smoothly and redundantly? Because if one of them goes down, my whole environment goes down and I have nothing left over. Another question would be, I installed icehouse 2 weeks ago, and in 6 months' time, because that's the rapid release cycle that is existing at the moment, the way OpenStack works and the way they develop, I have to update all of my software, if I want to get the new features, to the next version, which is going to be Juno. And it's going to be the same thing 6 months after another. So how do I upgrade my versions from one version to another in a simple way without no downtime? Because my clients or my tenants which are running on the infrastructure shouldn't have to suffer from me taking care of the back plane of the infrastructure behind them. And of course, there's an issue of support, which I'll get into in a few minutes. So OpenStack high availability, and just so that you know, the slides will be available very soon straight after the conference, so if you want to not take pictures, you can take whatever you prefer. OpenStack high availability, there's a Bible, you can call it, in some kind of in some kind of words, on the OpenStack documentation site. It explains to you that you have to provide high availability for all the different components of OpenStack, be it the control nodes, API nodes, and so on and so forth. And the process is not a simple process in order to do that. And if you were looking today at Arthur's session, you would have seen that he noticed, and he made a nice slide, that it takes more than 6,000 commands in order to get up, if you were to type it all out, an OpenStack highly available environment from start to finish. 6,000 commands. Now, of course, there are tools which automate this whole provisioning process, which alleviate that pain, but it is still not a simple thing. You have to do a lot of thinking, how you deploy it, how you scale, where everything goes. It's not an easy thing to put in high availability for your management stack. And of course, not everything is the same. High availability of some of your components which are active behind the load balancer. Some of them are active passive, because if you run them active, your environment will kill over and die. But there's some which are multi-master. For example, your RabbitMQ runs as a multi-master between all different kinds of components as your message queue. And there is no single best way to do it. Of course, the documentation can say you can do a clustering mechanism with Corusync or with Pacemaker or some kind of other clustering software you would like to keep the process up and running, but there is no authoritative one way to do anything. I guess that's a good thing in open source, because there's lots of ways to do all kinds of things, but it doesn't make your life as an enterprise admin any easier. Eventually, hopefully one day, this is something I personally would like to see, and maybe, and I'm not sure if this will ever happen, of a way of how OpenStack would provide such kind of resilience or some kind of reliability in the stack. There would be some kind of service that would provide high availability for whatever you plug into it. If somebody develops a new component, be it Ceilometer, be it Heat, be it Trove, be it Ironic, so on and so forth, all they have to do is drop the service into the OpenStack high availability service, or the component into the high availability service, and OpenStack will take care of it itself. Will that ever happen? I don't know. But that is once upon a time, or hopefully one day, a dream that we'll actually do that. Are you ready for an upgrade? It's not a smooth process, not at all. It's getting better. There have been a number of improvements put into some of the components, for example, all the Nova Compute, which allow you to run controllers on one version and compute nodes on a previous version, at least for backwards compatibility. But it wasn't always like that. Up until Icehouse, that never existed. You had to upgrade the whole stack from start to finish to the new version in order to get things running. And that would mean downtime for every single component when you did that. And sometimes developers like to put in new features, and sometimes they break things which make things not backward compatible from 2 versions before. And they don't always work upgrading from older versions. If you go, for example, I don't want to upgrade every 6 months on my environment. I want to upgrade once a year or once every 2 years. Nobody will be able to guarantee you that you'll be able to upgrade from version X to version X plus 4 versions further. Doesn't happen. And these are things which people actually said at the Operator Summit. They're people which are actually running versions of OpenStack starting from C all the way to I, because they can't upgrade properly. So they have certain things running on the older versions, and eventually when they have to and have absolutely no other way to do anything else, they'll retire the old environments and just tell the people to provision their systems again on the new versions. Patches, according to the OpenStack lifecycle, are provided for 2 previous releases only. If the developers are very nice and very friendly, you can ask them to backport patches for older versions, but not necessarily will that happen, because OpenStack says we support 2 versions back, and that's, if anybody can tell me how long, 1 year. That means after a year, your environment is officially not supported by anybody. Of course, talks were coming out to say we want, like Ubuntu has their LTS version, which is valid for 5 years, that they promise they will support the LTS versions, in this case 1404 Trust, the latest one which they do is the latest LTS. And Red Hat is actually moving in that direction. They're saying, yes, we will support each and every version if you deploy Red Hat OpenStack through our mechanisms and, of course, purchase the licenses. We will support you for 2 to 3 to 4 years. I don't remember exactly the number of the period it will be, but they will give you the support. Of course, you have to pay for it, but you will be able to go to a vendor to say, yes, I want you to fix something which is there, it's not working from 3 years ago. When you install a new release or a new version, of course, there's things which change. For example, the GUI between Havana and Icehouse is different. The tabs are slightly different, the things fold in differently. There are differences. So of course, when you go to deploy a new production system which will run your whole cloud, of course, you have to put it into testing first. And make a deployment plan, how I'm going to upgrade everything, how I'm going to move all my workloads over, tell my users that they're going to have downtime or not have downtime, whatever it may be, back everything up, and so on and so forth. You have to implement it. Not necessarily can you implement everything in a day. It depends on how large your environment. It can take a week, it can take a month, it can take 6 months. And stabilize all the mess afterwards if there is any, because one of the things which I was quite shocked when I heard at the summit was that God forbid you if you have to roll back your OpenStack environment, because it's not going to be easy. There are ways, but it will be a very, very, very big problem. So in other words, hope nothing goes wrong, and if you do upgrade your environment, don't let it go down for more than an hour, or there's this whole big doctrine about how this should be done and what should be done and what shouldn't be done. A while back ago, I wrote on my blog a post about release cycles and why we're chasing our tails. And this post exactly was specifically for VMware. It got nothing to do with OpenStack whatsoever. And in that post I said, I asked a question on Twitter, how many people are still running ESX4? And we were already on 5.1, which was something like, or 5.5. And that's something like 18 months, 2 years after 4.0 was released. It's a long time. And there were 60% of the people which still said we're running ESX4. And why? Because we can't upgrade our environment. It takes a long time to do all the testing, implementation, and all the things which I mentioned over here. It takes a long time. Consider what happens when you have a 6-month release cycle and you have to upgrade every 6 months. All you're going to be doing is upgrading from one version to the next, one after the other, after the other, after the other, and you're not going to have time to do anything else. So that's a problem also. That's why people are saying we don't want to upgrade every 6 months. We need some kind of a long-term version which will be supported for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like the operating system will be as well. Enterprises want enterprise support. And if something goes wrong, I want to smack somebody in the head because they made a mistake. And if you deploy OpenStack and you have no vendor behind you, then who are you going to come to? The developers which are developing code on their spare time? People which pushed the wrong line of code into OpenStack and got missed by 5,000 people, the same thing which they had the OpenSSL bug, Heartbleed? Enterprises want enterprise support. In other words, if there's something wrong, I can pick up the phone, call a vendor's helpline, and they will sit with me until I fix my problem. So if that's the case, there is no free lunch. You have to have a vendor behind you, which means either you go to one of the people which are deploying those flavors behind you. If it be HP, Red Hat, Ubuntu, which will also provide you support, Maranta, so on and so forth. The whole list will give you support, but you pay per socket, per year, or whatever, according to that. So there's no free lunch. So it does cost money. Not everybody's going to say, I don't care about support. If it's a problem, I'll fix it myself. There are some companies which do that. There are companies which hold huge departments of developers, which all they do is they develop for OpenStack the whole day. One of them, for example, is Comcast. They have something like 300 people working only on OpenStack. And they will fix the problem if you have the problem, but not everybody has the resources or the money or the time to do that in their enterprise organization. Does anybody not know the story of clouds or pets and cattle? Pets and cattle. Anybody know the story or not know the story? Anybody know the story? Raise your hand. Okay, so I can see not everybody. Okay. At CERN, approximately 3 years ago, there was somebody which they're one of the biggest OpenStack deployments that I know of at the moment, something like 30,000 instances, or I'm not sure if it's nodes or instances, whatever else. But they put up a presentation to say, what's the difference between how can you run your applications in an enterprise or in a cloud environment? And the issue is you treat your workloads like cattle. In other words, your cow doesn't have a name, it has a number. Your cow goes and gives milk. You write down what time your cow went to give milk. It comes back, and so on and so forth. If your cow gets sick, you send it to the veterinarian and send this is the cow's number and you fix it. And if the cow gets really, really sick, you kill it and get a new cow. That's cattle. The difference between cattle and pets is your pet has a name. My cat's name is Frank. And Frank has been fed very well. He has a name tag around his neck. And I've treated him from being a small little kitten until he became a nice big cat and had more kittens than himself. They're my pets. I need them. I invest a huge amount of time in them. I spend money on them. And they're always unique. No one pet is exactly the same as the other. That's the difference between cattle and pets. And the idea behind this thing is if you are trying to find the application, if you try to treat your applications as pets on the cloud, it will never, ever, ever work. In other words, your applications have to be nameless, ready to die at any single second. Something will replace it within 2 minutes and you won't even feel the difference. That is what a cloud workload should be like. If you're thinking of running a Microsoft Exchange server on AWS or on OpenStack Cloud, you really need your head examined, because the amount of time to invest in configuring Exchange or Active Directory or something else, which is a pet, it's a very, very, very specific and spoiled pet, will not be able to be replaced within a second by another instance. So that's clouds and pets. And of course, for the enterprise environment today that are using these regular SharePoint kind of things or Exchange emails or I don't know what else, most of the workloads are pets. They're not cattle. That is why it's not going to be easy to move your current workloads to say, I want to deploy a SharePoint farm on OpenStack. Okay, are you sure you want to do that? Because they're not cattle. Only applications which are suitable to be running on cloud and they have the characteristics for a cloud application. For example, there's no state registered in the application itself. Everything's in an external database, or everything is replicated one to the other so that it can die at any minute and get a new instance with all the information back any second. That is some kind of thing you can run in your OpenStack cloud. What kind of services are provided by enterprise admins today? Backup, for example. Anybody not provide backup of their virtual images for their customers? I'm sure you do. Is there any way you can do that in OpenStack? But the question is, should you? Different paradigm. Does Amazon provide you backup for your images? No, you don't, because you're in charge of your information running in the cloud, and you're responsible for backing it up and providing ways or mechanisms to get the information restored if need be. It's a big discussion, two complete different views on life and how things should work, specifically between cloud people and enterprise people. But yes, not necessarily do you have to provide backup. Maybe you do. Maybe you want to provide that as an extra service to your customers. For example, I will give you backups 10 days back or a week back just in case you messed up your whole database on your application. Replication, for example, my data center and DR dies. What do I do with everything which is running in OpenStack? How do I bring it back up? God knows. Nobody knows it all today. There's no way to do it. Probably you will be able to write something to do it for yourself, but there's no way to say that every time a bit is written to replicate to that side, and if it falls, fail everything over. A good example of something like that is the integration of VMware that does it with SRM with all the storage vendors which allow you to do those kind of things. But for OpenStack, these things don't exist. Again, the question is, does it need to exist? A good question, another discussion, different views on the way things should be run. Monitoring. How do you monitor? Monitor your applications today. Sometimes you have the hypervisor level do it for you. Sometimes you just need to install an agent inside, and if so, it will be the same more or less. But there is a component in OpenStack called Ceilometer which provides metrics of the hypervisor and the underlying workloads, but it doesn't provide everything today. There's things which are not there, for example, volume metrics or how long the virtual machine or the instance has been up. It's all there, but the question is, how do you get it out? Because there's no GUI or any kind of way besides API calls, and you have to wrap your whole thing around it on your own, of how you get this information out and present it to somebody to say, I want to know how long my virtual machine has been up, how much I/O it has been using for the past 10 hours. Not necessarily will be able to get that information out to give back for yourself or for your user as well. And the two little things over here are actual cut and pastes from the discussions which were there. For example, how much size do you use for logs? Somebody was saying 5 gigabytes a day, 5-6 terabytes a day. It depends on how bad you're logging. That's a lot of space. You also have to make sure that you have enough storage capacity in order to do that as well. A good example as how things are different and way things are done differently. OpenStack, one of the questions which came up was, how do we do logging and should we standardize logging? And it came up that, of course, not all the components log the same way. They don't log the same message. Sometimes they log things differently, different error levels, and they're trying to make a standard of some sort to saying what are the log levels we should have. For example, what's critical, what's error, and of course, these are things, as I said, I copied paste from the developer sessions, which was actually quite entertaining. But things have not, at the moment, are not standardized. Every component does things differently. That's also a good thing and a bad thing, because that's the way open source projects work. Another service that you might be able to provide today is auditing and compliance. Who did what? And when did they do it? Why did they do it? Who allowed them to do it? For example, who turned off all those firewall rules that allowed every single virtual machine to go to the internet without going any kind of protection whatsoever, and in, of course. These are things which do not exist today. There's no way of knowing who did what in your OpenStack environment, or probably there are if you would parse all the logs and get everything, but there's no logical way to do it today which will allow you to give that information and present it to you as an administrator or as a compliance director or whatever else. The same thing is this workload allowed to run on this cluster because I have certain conformities which I need to do because of regulation, if it be healthcare, HIPAA, SOX, so on and so forth. I want to know that there are certain workloads which are not allowed to run in a cluster which have got the same things as testing VMs or DNZ VMs. And if they are, somebody does put it there by mistake because I recognize there's some piece of software which was installed, what do I do? Do I shut it down? Do I move it somewhere else? Where do I move it to? Who do I notify? These things also, at the moment, do not exist in OpenStack. As I said, I really, really like OpenStack. And there's work going on, and there's work being done daily. And usually, it's actually quite interesting to see. These are people which have day jobs. They work either on other stuff, and in their time, either because their company says, you're working on OpenStack and developing a driver for so-and-so and so-and-so, but they provide code for the community, and it's very interesting. And it takes time for people to understand, and specifically the developers, because not all of them have operator and enterprise experience behind them, because most developers unfortunately don't, because they develop a line of code, and each one develops a small piece of software. And things are coming. They are coming. It will take time, and what I would like you to take out of this session today is to see it is possible. Anything is possible. You can write a driver which will replicate your storage from one side to the other and find a solution which will do that for you from a storage vendor and so on and so forth. Anything is possible. The question is how much time you're willing to invest, how much money, and how flexible you are willing to be in order to adapt and adopt a new technology inside your environment. And the last point that I want to tell you is not everything should run in OpenStack. There are things that will always stay as legacy applications and will never, ever be suitable to run in an OpenStack or a cloud environment. Even though everybody will say anything can run in cloud, there are still things which will never, ever run in cloud. Anybody have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, about upgrades, I didn't understand where we stand today with OpenStack, no downtime upgrade. Are we there already, or?
So for those who didn't hear the question is where do we stand today with upgrades for OpenStack? So at the moment, from what I understand, the only component which allows you to do a rolling upgrade, or two components, one of them is Swift, and the second one is Nova Compute. In other words, you can upgrade your hypervisor by shutting down all the instances, which is another big issue because you can't right-click enter maintenance mode and move everything off. It doesn't work that way. In other words, all the instances will either have to have some other application redundancy in order for them to continue and survive when you pull down the host, because the instances on the host will have to come down as well, or migrated off, or there's all kinds of ways of doing those things. But there are 1,000 other components as well, which also you have to shut down your API. In other words, there's no access to the GUI environment while you're doing an upgrade. So there is no zero down uptime at the moment. Only for certain components does it exist today. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you had a good day. There should be one last session of panel with Nati and Mark, I'm not sure. But thank you very much. I hope you had a good day today. Thank you.